The white supremacist oligarchs have been rolling back constitutional rights for decades. They abhorred the New Deal and have been dismantling it piece by piece since its inception. The will of the people stands in the way of the ideals of the white supremacist elite, while pedestrian white supremacists and their allies make useful idiots when parroting state narratives or blurting out red herrings to discredit or defer from what's taking place or being covered up. Now you may wonder what I'm talking about. What's the point of this, you might ask? Well, it's that time of the year again. That time of the year when the corporate media celebrates the self-inflicted atrocity known as 9/11. Yep, September 11th. When the Mossad and the CIA, along with the Saudis, blew up the Twin Towers, detonated Building 7, blew up part of the Pentagon, shot down a plane full of passengers. This inside job served myriad objectives. Silverstein, for example, who owned the Twin Towers, wanted to sell the buildings, but nobody wanted to buy something that was still loaded with tons of asbestos, upwards to, I believe, like 380 tons worth, which would have cost him probably almost $1 billion to remove. So his participation speaks for itself. Insurance fraud is cheaper than fixing and selling the buildings. You get free demolition, courtesy of the CIA and Mossad, who pose as artists in a security and a repair detail to install the bombs, blow up the buildings, collect the insurance money, and then sell the land. And it's funny that the developer of the new property is now the president. Anyway, and of course, as previously mentioned, the white supremacist owners of America wanted to roll back the rights of the people and create a police state. And they got that goal achieved via the Patriot Act, which was written up well before 9/11 and enacted immediately after. And Homeland Security, which is used by the state to track down those they deem subversive, like activist Darren Seals, who they murdered. They also staged false flag attacks to take away rights via revisions to the draconian Patriot Act. What's more, the Israelis use AIPAC to push their expansionist agenda, especially in Iraq, where they now have a military base, and getting rid of Saddam, who supported the rightful owners of the land that the white supremacist rabbinate stole from the real owners, who let them into the land as refugees, which explains why they're so apprehensive as we speak to all the blacks that they agreed to take in after they partitioned and destroyed South Sudan. Now, as we know, the dark rabbinate of evil who stole the land back in 1948, these people are opening the door for the white supremacist oligarchs' heartland theory. They opened the door for the white supremacist heartland theory agenda, which is to take over the world via Central Asia, or South Central Asia, hence the execution of an attack on Afghanistan prepared long in advance of 9/11. Remember, Jack and Dandies, the Israeli, or not the Israelis, the U.S. government went to the Taliban and said to give up Bin Laden. They said they were going to do it. They had agreed. They were saying they were going to go in there and get him. That was the official story. I remember it. They're talking about it on TV over and over and over. But the reality that they don't talk about is they proposed a pipeline going through Afghanistan. And they wanted access to those minerals in certain areas. The Taliban said no. They couldn't promise that because the warlords don't give a fuck. They still don't, which is why they still don't have a pipeline. They'll just keep blowing it up over and over and over. And so they invaded. That's when they planned to invade and destroy the Taliban that they propped up back in Carter's era under Operation Phoenix. Now, that war, as well as the one in Iraq where they destroyed the entire country's infrastructure on purpose and never rebuilt it and laundered the money, that opened the door for the alphabets, as well as the military industrial complex, who needed an excuse for their exorbitant budgets by declaring war on a fucking tactic, which would lead to perpetual warfare. There's no end in sight, and it allows them to expand their surveillance grid on the world, along with justifying their black ops missions taking place right now in Yemen, Colombia, Venezuela, Bolivia, the Congo, Uganda, Somalia, Kenya, the Philippines, and Ukraine, a nation where the United States installed a fascist neo-Nazi regime. These massive amounts of conflict also open the door for companies like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and Boeing to sell weapons on all sides, or keeping the U.S. Gov abreast of who has what, so that they know what weapons to use to counter these guys easily. This is similar to what the pedestrian white law enforcement people did to the black liberation groups in the 50s and 60s, in the 60s and 70s. Then of course you have the multinationals who essentially laundered money, as I said, through rebuilding efforts in Iraq. Building efforts which were infinitesimal at best, which is why Iraqis are fighting and rioting to this day while the money is unaccounted for and the country's still in ruins. Speaking of which, make no mistake, kids, the $3 trillion that got lost by the Pentagon, and I put that in quotes, wasn't the cause of 9/11. It was the price tag of setting it up. That's what that was. And of course, you have the pharmaceutical industry. And they greatly benefit from the opiates that have been cultivated, guarded, and processed by the United States government and the Afghani drug lords that they work with, as well as the Mexican and Latin American cartels. These companies thrive by taking advantage of the still devastated white communities in the Rust Belt and the mining communities, which is why over 90 people a day die from opioids. That right there, Jackadandies, is the real white genocide done to whites by whites. But as we all know, white supremacists don't like to pay attention to white-on-white crime, now do they? These companies even account for the illegal opiates like heroin in their budgets, as these corporations are heavily involved in the street trade. This is something that you won't hear on Fox News or MSNBSC. Now, getting to the direct players, talking about the dancing Israelis from urban moving systems, Muhammad Atta and all these jackadandies. The deal is, Urban Moving Systems was one of many Mossad front companies that they used to get guys into the country. And they found that these guys had vans full of explosives trying to blow up the George Washington Bridge before the cops stopped them. The other one got caught heading to Jersey. They had maps with highly popular sites circled. They had box cutters, fake passports, and weapons. They were not spying on the Saudi terrorists. They were working together. There were 6 Mossad moving company fronts working in like 10 different states from California to Florida. Sephardi, who owned Urban Moving Systems, was connected to the art student in Florida who was spying on the DEA. The Kurzbergs, who worked for Urban Moving Systems, were connected to the drug ring who laundered money through the flight school that the Saudi terrorists used. That's because the Israelis got the Saudi terrorists in that school in the first place. No other school would take them because they were flagged by the FBI. Muhammad Atta, Mamari, and Sephardi were all clicked in with each other, make no fucking mistake about it. And the intel from the DEA was used to keep the FBI and the DEA off the Saudis' asses while they planned the fucking attack. The CIA got Atta's crew into the country and out to the plains. The military claimed that they were on some sort of training mission or military simulation or some bullshit. So they couldn't respond. But see, that's horse shit. What they were really doing, what the Air Force was really doing, was clearing a goddamn path which allowed the planes to hit the targets. I ain't lying about none of this shit. And to this day, there's nothing linking the CIA puppet Osama bin Laden, nor Al-Qaeda, which is a CIA operative group, to this false flag, as proven by State Department cables sent to the NTC back in 2002. What's in those cables is nothing but arbitrary fluff, which is why the imbecile-in-chief Bush and his handler Cheney said that capturing bin Laden really didn't matter. In the end, the events of September 11th were nothing more than a convenient way for the U.S. government to justify another horseshit invasion and occupation of a key geostrategic landmass in South Asia, keeping in line with the white supremacist goal of subjugating the rest of the world as outlined in the Heartland Theory. Since locking down that region would give them the energy supply, control of resources, and logistics to beat anyone, especially China and Russia. And as we know, they'll do anything to get that done. Because this country is all about the false flag attacks. And we know the attacks they've done. We know that these assholes even admit that along with NATO, they helped carry out fucking terror bombings in Italy and other European countries in the 50s, and then blame the fucking communists. And they did that to rally support for their puppet governments. They did a terrorist attack on the Turkish Prime Minister back in 1960. They blew up, what the fuck was that? Something else in Italy that happened. I think it was the Piazza Fontana massacre back in like 1970. They bombed Portugal back in 66. terror attack in Turkey back in 1971. What the hell? There's another one. Fuck. I need to start writing notes. Oh yeah, the Atocha massacre in Spain back in 1978. They abducted the Prime Minister of Italy that same year. They bombed a railroad station in Bologna, Italy back in 1980. And then they shot up a mall in Belgium back in 1985. This was all done by the CIA to get people on their side. You know, we all know what they did with Operation Ajax in Iran, where they killed an elected official and then put a fucking dictator on the seat to control the oil. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, we know about that. We also know about the Gulf of Tonkin, which was a staged event. The USS Liberty was a staged event so that they could get into a position to bomb Egypt. Take out Sadat. Either Sadat or Abdel Nasser, I don't remember. And wanted that as an excuse to bomb that place. And they were going to use a fucking nuke to do it. These motherfuckers have been doing this for years. You cannot trust the United States government. You can't. You can't trust them at all. They will stop at nothing to get their goals accomplished. And if that means killing 3,000 innocent civilians, then that's nothing. Just another day in the office for your government. Just another day in the office, man. See, the white supremacist Jew Leo Strauss, he based his whole philosophy that influenced guys like Brzezinski and Kissinger on false flag attacks and large-scale violence to achieve ends, while flooding the public with half-truths and propaganda that stifles dissent. You have to be a fool to trust this government, the same government that killed JFK and his brother for looking into the Israelis' nuclear program. Oliver Stone didn't touch on that though. And it really isn't espionage. Because the Jewish occupation works in favor of the white supremacist oligarchs, who, as I keep saying, want to control the region. So at the end of the day, 9/11 was an inside job done by America to further the goals of the white supremacist oligarchs. And that's the truth. Bitch.